I was called there to, take care of him. I arrived a few minutes later, and his heart had stopped. He was just laying there, just basically dead in a big pool of blood. Back of his head was just lacerated, just a huge laceration opened up there.
Welcome to Conversations brought to you by It Is Written. I'm John Bradshaw. My guest is an author, a physician, a mission doctor. There's not much this fella hasn't done. He's Dr. David Gild. Gordon, welcome to Conversations. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
You have a remarkable life story. Part of that is the story of losing your son in tragic circumstances. Part of that is what came out of that, something that was revolutionary and groundbreaking here in the United States. But you've sort of looked back over your life and written a wonderful book called The Adventures of Freckles, Life Lessons from a Mischievous Son of Canada. That mischievous son of Canada is you, because you are a Canuck. I'm not sure where to begin. I think what we'll do is we'll talk about the book.
All right.
And then we'll talk about the experience where you lost your son and what came out of that and what you went through with all of that. We'll do the seriouser part second, although this is seriously funny and seriously fun. One of the great features about the book is that it features a preface written by me. But I don't know that it's the best feature of the book. This is a collection of stories directed particularly at children, life lessons, experiences from your life, inspirational stories. Why'd you write the book?
Well, my grandchildren, I got 13 of them, 2 adopted ones over in Romania, but the other ones in the States here. They said to me, Grandpa, when you turn 80 years old, you're going to die pretty soon.
Oh, they said that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Kids are pretty realistic.
I'll be straightforward with you.
Sure, very straightforward. So
yeah.
Said you better write down your stories from Canada. You had a pretty interesting Canadian childhood. And then it's about your mission trips around the world, from Siberia to Africa to Mongolia, all over.
Yeah.
And so I finally got with it. And it took me a little while, but a year and a half ago, they published the book.
Yeah. Kids can be, they'll speak to you without a filter on.
Yes.
I've also learned that people on Facebook will do the same. I posted something to Facebook talking about work, and somebody got on there and they said this, as though I wasn't there, posted it to my page, responding to something I posted. They said, "We knew Pastor Bradshaw a number of years ago. I can't believe how he has aged." Lady, who do you think is going to read that? Mm-hmm. So, okay, she may have even been telling the truth. I think she actually was. First question I'm going to ask you. Are there stories you didn't include in the book that you could have? I imagine you could probably write another book like this.
Yes, there's quite a few that I didn't include, but there's quite a few that I probably could not include.
Which stories are you most proud of? Or which ones? Because a lot of them are funny. A lot of them. Not all of them, but a lot of them are funny. Some are poignant, but some are funny. Which one, when you think of the book, for example, when your new great-grandson is old enough to say, "Tell me a story, great-grandpa," and you think, stories in the book, where would you begin? What's a good one?
Well, I guess I had a good little friend, four-legged friend. His name was Buster, and that's
Buster.
a picture.
Buster's front and center in this book.
Yes, and he was always with me, so a lot of stories about Buster, but I guess some of those are pretty funny, and hopefully through all my stories, I tried to draw a little spiritual conclusion to them.
Yeah.
So it's for both adults and children, really. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a story in here where you were asked by your mother or father to go and pick tomatoes, not tomatoes, but tomatoes. And you and your friend had a basket of tomatoes, and you, I think, said to your friend, "I bet you I could hit the side of the neighbor's house from here with a tomato." Big old white house with the side just inviting. And by the time you were done, the two of you had emptied the baskets of tomatoes all over the side of the neighbor's house.
Terrible, huh?
What were you thinking, man?
We were just having fun as kids. We weren't thinking, just enjoying life.
Just having fun as kids.
Until my dad stepped out.
And your dad stepped out, and he sort of applied some discipline. Your dad was a bit of a disciplinarian.
Yes, he was a Scotchman, and he believed in the Bible, spare the rod and spoil the child.
Yeah. Was he unkind with it, or do you think he was appropriate with it?
He was very forceful, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
In today's society, we might call it child abuse, I suppose. But I hate to even think of that, because he needed to whip me into shape so I could be what I was going to be.
And he kind of did. Your dad wasn't your dad a boxer?
Yes, he was a professional boxer.
A professional boxer. Did you inherit any of those boxing skills?
No, No.
Oh, good. Okay, so we can carry on. I don't need to worry too much. Did your dad love you?
Yes.
Was that obvious?
Yes.
Yeah. Different era, though, wasn't it?
Different era, yes.
So justice was sometimes stern and a little on the severe side. But through all of that, you never had any doubt about your father's love.
No.
So how did your mother feature in your childhood? What kind of figure was she as opposed to whatever figure your dad was?
Very quiet, very humble, very gracious, very forgiving, very loving,
Yeah.
and very protective.
Your dad was a Scotsman. He immigrated to Canada from Scotland?
Yes.
What was your mom's background?
From Wales.
Oh, is that so? And they immigrated as well?
Yes.
Oh, so you're the real British thing. Oh, yeah? Okay. So what sort of reaction have you had to the book? What have people said to you about the book?
Well, they just say, "Boy, we love your stories," but then, and people said, "We never knew that was the inside of you."
Yeah.
We've always saw me as a serious, kind person,
you're-
caring person, but
You're a-
they
you're
didn't
a
realize
physician.
there was that mischievous aspect in my life.
As a doctor, you have a serious side. You deal with serious business all the time.
Life and death, yes.
Yeah. So we'll talk about the book every so often because it is what it is. It is life lessons from a mischievous son of Canada, autobiographical sketches. I was just delighted by it, absolutely delighted by it. That's one aspect of your life and your ministry. We're going to talk about something I think very serious soon, something that will deal with the death of your son and what grew out of that, which was profound, I think, profound. But before we get there, you're a missionary doctor. You've gone on numerous mission trips. You've come with us on a whole slew of It Is Written mission trips. You've mentioned earlier that you've been to Siberia, Mongolia, which actually are not very far from each other, I guess, when you come to think about it. What other places have you been? You've been to Moldova several times.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, why is it you keep going back to Moldova? You've been there, I don't know, was it 4 times, 5 times now?
Right.
What is it that takes you back to a place like that?
Well, my first trip there was with It Is Written.
Yeah.
There was like 19 pastors, and I was the only physician, lay pastor. And I just met a pastor there that we just clicked like brothers, and he invited me to come back and help him out. And I just been going back and met another pastor there, went back to his place, and met his son, went to Romania, and it just grew there, all from the It Is Written experience.
But one of the reasons I'm really keen to talk to you about this is because what you say is going to inspire somebody else to say, man, we could get involved in missions as well. Why do you do it? Why do you still go on mission trips?
I always come back more blessed than when I go,
And why do you think that is?
because I think we have almost an instinct to serve, and when we want to serve our fellow mankind. And so it might seem like a little drop in the hat to do one mission trip and for a few days or whatever. But when you see these people, the service you can give them, the hope you can give them, health aspects that you can give them, it's very rewarding.
Yeah. So what are the sorts of things that you do? You go to Moldova, you go to Zimbabwe, or maybe I'm thinking of I'm thinking of Zimbabwe. We were there together.
Yes.
We were in Bolivia together, Mongolia together,
Down in Cape Town.
and a number of other places that you've been independent of me. What do you actually do as a physician in these places?
I always pack my medical bag and lots of nutritional supplements. And usually we start out in the morning there. I'll just give you a little example. We start out in the morning with a pastor there because he's already set up clinic times and so forth. And we'll do clinics early in the morning. Then we'll go to public high schools and do drug education for the students, which is really, really rewarding.
Oh, yeah.
And that opens up many, many doors for Adventism and just the love of Jesus. And this pastor I work with, it's amazing. He doesn't care if they're Seventh-day Adventists or not. He just loves Jesus. And he says people need to know who Jesus is. And if you love Jesus, everything else will fall into place, which is really true.
Yeah.
And so that's the aspect. And so we get into police stations. I do physicals for the policemen and health checks for them, just all kinds of things like that. And then come back in the evening. We have a church service. I do a children's story, health talk for the people, and then a sermon. Although I don't consider myself a preacher, I still give them little sermons. And then after that, we'll probably have another medical clinic, and we'll go from early hours in the morning till midnight or whatever it takes to see the people.
They could be long days, can't
And
they?
the days just roll like that, day after day.
You know what really impresses me about the medical professionals who come with us on mission trips? I'm thinking about all of them, but in particular dentists, because I've been recently working with some dentists. They'll leave behind their busy work in the United States. They'll pay to go to some other part of the world to work without getting paid. They'll work like, what's the respectable, work like Trojans. They'll just work like cart horses and love it. And they'll say, this is what we got into medicine for. This is what we got into dentistry for, to help people. And without all the regulations and without all the charting and without all the this and other stuff that drags you down, it just inspires me to see medical people who don't need to be there to go to some place and work their tails off and love it. We were just in Ethiopia now. We had a dentist come with us. He arrived in Ethiopia Monday morning and went straight to the work site. Worked all day, went back to the hotel, slept. Worked all week. Of course, Sabbath was Sabbath. Sunday, he flew back home, started back in his dental practice Monday morning. Not even an hour off. But he'll say, it was a blessing to go and to serve and pour myself into the lives of others. I just find that inspiring. That's your experience? I don't want to speak for you, but how would you describe that?
Yes, very good description. Yes. I can give one little example. I guess I saw this one lady in Mongolia that had been to many doctors because she had a tumor in her leg.
Yes.
That was extremely painful. I mean, she could hardly tolerate the pain, but she had no pain medicine. She just put up with it. And the doctor said, sorry, we can't do anything for you. And so she asked what I could do for her. So I examined her. I said, well, I can remove the tumor for you, and we can check to make sure that's not a problem. And she said, I'd like to have that done. She said, so I had my supplies with me. I have a little surgical kit that I carry with me and a little dental kit that I carry with me for my different procedures. So I said to the pastor, now you're going to have to be my nurse, and you're going to have to promise me that you're not going to pass out on me. And he said, I'll do my best. So I scrubbed up her leg there and got it all cleaned up, put the anesthetic in for her, opened the leg up, took the tumor out, and I brought a little bottle of formalin with me, preservative, put the tumor in the formalin, sewed her back up again, and she got off the table and says, I'm pain-free. Well, the anesthetic hadn't quite worn off, but the next day she was still pain-free. So,
wow.
So I brought the tumor back with me, and I found an Adventist pathologist here in Chattanooga that would examine it for me, because that's a problem to get tissue, foreign country tissue from anywhere outside the lab into another lab. And she examined it, and it was a nerve tumor, not cancer. So it was, answer to prayer. Huh?
So until she discovered that and she knew she had a tumor there, what was she thinking her future looked like?
I think in her mentation, she probably thought she's going to live with that pain and die with that pain.
And you were there at the right time. God led you to her, you intervened, and it was life-changing.
Right.
I recall a story that you told me after examining a woman in, I think it was Zimbabwe, might have been South Africa. And now the problem is telling you a story back. If I got the story wrong, I'm going to ruin a really good story or invent a good story. But as I recall, you were examining a lady who had some health issue, and she informed you that she was about to have a double mastectomy. And you asked if you might examine her. And she consented, and you did, and you informed her you don't have breast cancer at all. It was some other condition, probably uncomfortable, probably something she'd rather do without, but not cancer. And so you were able to intervene and spare her the trauma of going through a double mastectomy. And I thought, wow, if that's not just God putting you in the right place at the right time,
right.
Remarkable. So from your mission trips abroad, you just shared one story with me there from Mongolia. What's a really memorable place that you've been? Some place when you think back, this just jumps up in your mind.
You'll remember Mongolia.
Oh, yeah.
We had, I think, 4 trips there before your planned evangelist series. So when we came, there was 119 in that group that came.
Big group, yeah.
Big group. And you were in the main auditorium there in Mongolia.
Yep.
And I think we're on our last night there, and a lady came up to me and says, there's a lady in the poor part of town here in one of the high-rise buildings that would like you to come and pray for her. And I thought, well, that's kind of unusual. I said, well, I'd be happy to pray for her. I like to pray for people. I love to pray for people. But I said, I'm not a pastor. I'm a physician. And she said, no, she wants the doctor to come and pray for her. And I said, well, I guess if, I can do that if you like, but we have all kinds of pastors here. No, we want the doctor. And I said, okay, so I'll get my bag and I'll get a nurse, and you provide a translator for us, and we'll go. So we jumped in the car, and you were still preaching. So we went to the high rise. And it was a secure high-rise in a poor part of town. The kids were playing outside in the streets, just, that was a playground, just the streets themselves. Went up this old rickety elevator and came into the room, and there this young lady, just in her early 30s, was just laying in bed there with this big masses on the side of her neck that looked like bunches of grapes, purple grapes, just cancer, just loaded with cancer. And she was basically on her deathbed. And they all seem to think that the American doctor, even though I'm Canadian, I'm still, they think I'm the American doctor. We have some magic or something that we can do for him. And I examined her and said, I'm really sorry, but there's nothing more that we can do. Even if you're in the United States, there wouldn't be anything more that we can do except to keep you comfortable, And I said, but I can come and I can pray for you. And she said, I'd like you to do that. And so, interesting enough, just before I left on that trip, I was just putting my things together. My doctor's bag was it was plumb full. I could hardly zip it closed. And I glanced over on the shelf in my little library, and there was a little New Testament Bible sitting there. I thought, well, I should take that with me, but really don't really have any room. But, well, I better take it. So I took the little Bible, put it in my doctor bag, and away I went. So guess what? Here I am at this lady's house, open my bag up, and there's my little Bible, just perfect. So I gave her what I call my 5-minute little spiritual message from the Garden of Eden to the cross. And then when I got through, I read her John 3:16, and I asked her if she'd like to accept Jesus. She said, yes, I would, in perfect English.
Well, really?
So we had a prayer together, and her 3-year-old daughter got down off the bed and came over, put her arm around my leg, said, Dr. Gild, in English, says, thank you for coming and praying for my mother.
Wow.
2 weeks later, she passed away.
Wow. And she died in the hope of Jesus as her Savior and Lord.
I'm going to see her.
Yes. Which tells you that when you travel as a physician or a nurse or a laborer or whatever you might be on a mission trip, you have the opportunity to do a whole lot more than you might otherwise expect to do.
Yes.
Hugely impactful.
And the most important thing is not their physical well-being, is their spiritual well-being.
I think what's true is that many people who work in the medical field don't realize what a great influence they have. When you're in a spiritual situation or a mission situation, well, we know that even from home, wherever home might be, doctors and nurses are looked up to with a great amount of respect, and people place a lot of trust in them. They'll open up and talk about things they otherwise wouldn't talk about. They'll tell them their darkest secrets and ask for advice with very open hearts. So if you're in a mission field and you're an MD or a DO or you're a nurse or nurse practitioner, whatever it might be, you're in a place where you can have a big influence on people by virtue of your qualifications, the inherent trust in your position. It's just a great thing. And I think you mentioned too something worth repeating, and that is the most important thing is somebody's spiritual health. So
right.
If you can be there and minister to somebody physically and point that person to Jesus, that's a real powerful thing.
Makes it all worthwhile.
It does, I think, eh?
Yes.
And gives you opportunities to do things which working at home in a hospital or in a clinic, you might not otherwise have the opportunity to do. Although there are many medical providers who will pray with their patients and so forth, and that's a great thing. Is there a place that you've been in your travels that you'd call a favorite place? Maybe you have many favorite places.
Many favorite places. I've been to Africa multiple times. I love Africa.
Yes.
For two things. For the people, of course, primary, yes. But the animals. And you get close to the animals, in the Masi area. And it's wonderful. I love that. But I'd have to say probably Moldova and Romania because of the connections that first started this written that I have. Because I go there and I do in the public schools, the health education for the students, drug education for the students. The police stations, see the people, county people, and so on. Those are all rewarding things, And then, of course, along with the medical clinics that you have. So that's what makes it really worthwhile. And those have been good experiences for me, both in Romania and in Moldova.
Now, you came with us on It Is Written's first mission trip, the It Is Written Missions mission trip, and that one was to India. We had a conversation and we said, well, instead of just me going, why don't we take a team? So a couple of physicians came, you and Dr. Vila, and a family or two and some vacation Bible school folks. And so we extended the reach of that mission trip rather spectacularly, as it turns out. I wonder if you remember, it can be challenging going to some of these places because they have cultural customs where they'll honor you You remember they paraded us through town? We were riding on an ox cart. The oxen had been decorated with pink powder.
Yes.
We must have looked like a couple of Maharajas riding through town being honored by the poor village people. I remember that. That was almost surreal, I think. You remember that?
Yes.
Yeah. And I tried to talk us out of that. No, we don't want to do this. Yes, you must. No, this looks bad. It just looks bad. It looks like we're there to colonize a country. Sorry, you have to do this because we're honoring you and want to draw attention to the work that's going on here. I guess we had to. Don't know if they'd still do it today, a dozen years later or more, but maybe they would.
But it was very rewarding, the baptisms that came afterwards.
Yes, very rewarding. Very rewarding.
One young Adventist fellow that came to the meetings, he was inspired. And since that time, he calls me every year, about this time of the year, and asks for donation. He does his own evangelistic program. And he says he'll have maybe 400 or 500 people come.
Fantastic, eh?
Isn't that something?
Yeah,
Just a little spin-off from a mission trip. You never know what's going to happen, how God's going to lead. The Holy Spirit just opens up doors after door after door.
Yeah. Yeah, just too good. Hey, now, in this book, you write a story about when you were at college in Canada and you had some help from people who lived in the girls' dorm. So there was a tunnel, didn't the tunnel connect the boys' dorm and the girls' dorm? But you weren't able to freely get through unless someone unlocked the thing and let you in. If I'm remembering this correctly, I've read the book. And you got inside the girls' dormitory and you had something with you that you left behind in the girls' dorm. Tell me about that.
Well, it was just late one night. We, roommate and I thought we need to do something to, spark up our lives a little bit. So we thought, why don't we get a bag full of chickens and take them over to the girls' dorm? So
a bag full of chickens.
Yeah. So we got out of our beds and crawled up on the roof and crossed the roof and saw the northern lights, which were kind of pretty.
Oh, yeah.
Down the fire escape into the chicken coop and stuffed about 15, 20 chickens in a couple of big bags, gunny sacks.
As you do.
And went to the administration boiler room. The tunnel from the boys' dorm to the administration room, that was closed off. You couldn't get in that. But the tunnel from the administration to the girls' dorm was still open.
Okay.
But there was 2 locked doors in the girls' dorm. So I'd asked one of the girls ahead of time if she could unlock the doors that evening because we had a little surprise for the girls. And she willingly did that.
Yeah.
So we got through there with our chickens and went up on the second floor, tile floor. And we let the chickens out on the tile floor. Well, you can imagine chickens can't stand up on tile floor. And they were squawking and making all kinds of deposits, of course, and just scared the life out of all the girls in the door. And they opened the doors and they were just screaming. Yeah, and we quickly dropped our bags downstairs through the tunnel and up the fire escape, across the roof, down the fire escape into our beds, and we're gone to sleep again. So the next day there was all kinds of talk around the campus. Nobody could figure out the girls' door. Dean said, I had all the doors locked. I don't understand how anybody could even get in. If the girls were totally safe, we just don't know. They never did find out.
They never found out?
No.
But there was at least one girl on the inside of that dormitory.
Yes, and she never spilled the beans.
She never spoke up.
Yeah. So
Boy,
I in my story there, I apologized. But it was just some fun things.
Somewhere there's someone who was in that dormitory that night, and I hope she gets a copy of the Adventures of Freckles and reads it, and she says, it was Gild. I bet somebody knew it was you. Were you as mischievous then as you were later on in life?
I think so.
Or even earlier in life?
all my life, but that's just part of growing up, I was just a happy young boy, and I didn't mean to do wrong things. I didn't mean to get, in bad situations or do bad things, but I say mischievous. So.
Yeah. There's a couple of times in here where you tell stories on yourself and you say, I didn't mean to do the wrong thing, but I mean, what in the world were you thinking? I think it says a lot about boys. Some boys just don't really think.
You're right.
They just do. And they need to be understood. Some bad boys aren't bad at all. Maybe they're just a little restless or shiftless or adventurous or what would happen if I did this? Or what would happen if I did that? Curious maybe, huh?
I just hope that the message is for young people when they read that. Yes, you can do mischievous things, but we have a forgiving God,
Yeah.
And our parents are forgiving too, and God always forgives us if we come to Him and ask Him for forgiveness, and that's a beautiful thing.
That's right.
Yeah.
In your childhood, you did some dumb things, but nothing malicious. Nothing where harm was intended. Just fun. Just kids having fun. So what was growing up in Canada like? And which part of Canada were you raised in?
I was born in Vancouver, and then Victoria, Vancouver Island, was a good share of my life. But then we moved up in northern part of British Columbia, way up north for a while. So a number of different areas in British Columbia.
So what took you north? You were following Dad's work?
Right, yes.
What sort of work was he doing?
He was working at a logging camp up there as a first day director.
Yeah. Victoria's beautiful, isn't it?
Nice city.
Was it as beautiful then as it is now? Maybe more so.
I think probably more so,
Yeah. And then you went north. That was wild up there. And being as we're going back 70 or so years, it might have been pretty primitive way up there.
Oh, and we lived in like a wooden house with the fireplace and then a wooden coal stove, No electricity.
No electricity. Yeah.
And we had outhouses.
Were you poor?
Very poor.
Did you know you were poor?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Although we go to school, sometimes we kind of see that other kids dressed different ways and whatever. We'd think about that, but never bothered us.
Never felt poor.
Never felt poor.
How many kids were there in your family?
There was 4 boys, and then we'd all lost a daughter, a sister at birth.
Oh, but 4 boys growing up together. Oh man, your poor mother.
Yes.
Yeah.
She was a saint.
Yeah, she was tried in the refiner's fire with 4 boys running around. That's for real. Now, so a poor kid growing up in a very much a working class family in the wilds of British Columbia, you ended up as a physician, which is a very unlikely story. That's unlikely. You could have ended up a logger, right? Truck driver, plumber. I mean, a trade like that, just a really good, honorable profession. But you ended up a doctor. So I'm going to ask you about that. When you were much younger, did you dream of being a doctor? Did you have aspirations to be a physician?
Not really, no.
So how'd you fall into doctoring?
Well, actually, when I went to Energy University for my undergraduate, I registered as a phys ed major. And I took but I always had interest in sciences. So I took a bunch of science courses at the same time and ended up feeling that teaching wasn't my calling. And so I went into research with Whirlpool Corporation, developing space food for the astronauts and their waste management systems there, so they could in space, they could, they call them poop bags and pee bags, so they could take care of their hygiene and space.
Hang on. So you started you got a science degree, and you started working on feeding astronauts and figuring out effective ways to help them to poop.
Right.
Okay, I mean, I don't even want to ask you about the research that went into that, but
it's very interesting.
I'm sure.
So I'll just give you one little example. I had to go uptown to the city there and buy ladies' girdles, and we'd wear the ladies' girdles and we'd put peanut butter in the girdles, and then we'd jump around and do all kinds of maneuvers to make sure the peanut butter stayed in the girdles or in the pants, so to speak. So that's what the astronauts used initially. It was our design that they used. Now they have toilets, not a problem, of course. But it was pretty interesting. And the same thing with the emptying their bladders. They had to have a special type of bag and control, and then they could seal them with bacteria in there afterwards and put them on the wall in the space capsule.
But they put the bags of urine on the wall of the space capsule. So which space mission were you working on?
Well, that was in the early '60s, so there's all kinds of the satellites were just coming up, going into space at that time.
What a fascinating thing. Was that a hard job to get? I mean, or you just kind of stumbled into that?
I just kind of stumbled into it. It was very interesting, and I had really a good mentor there, the fellow, and I just knew that I saw these PhDs coming there doing these research on medical different things, and I thought to myself, and we do an experiment with animals and so on. I like animals, but I really like people. I'd like to be with people. I want to go to medicine. So I just wrote the dean a letter at the medical school and told him who I was, what I was doing. He said, finish these courses, get these kind of grades, and call me back. And that was just history. I went to med school.
So you got into science, and you figured, I want to work with people, so medical school is it. How about that? So were your family members surprised? I don't know if your mum and dad were still alive at this time, but what did they think their boy was studying to be a doctor?
My my mother-in-law, she thought I was nuts. We had our son Mark, who knew, he was like 3 years old, and then our second son David was on his way. So we didn't owe anybody money. We had an old Ford car and had $2,000 in the bank. And we just went saying, God will take care of us. Moved to Kansas City, and my mother-in-law thought we were absolutely crazy, leaving a good paying job, in research.
Yeah.
But she was nice. She didn't really say anything, and we got along fine. We did good. God saw us through it.
Wow.
And, the first week of med school, our son was born. That was a little traumatic because here I am studying medicine, and got a new son. Already have another one, and it was pretty hectic. But God got us through it.
She had 2 little kids, one a newborn, and you just started medical school. That must have been a fascinating challenge for your wife, Carol.
Yes, it was. Yeah, very much so.
Medical school today, medical school anytime, you got to make a lot of sacrifices. You got to work really, really hard, study the lights out, and you did all of that.
But my wife was really good. She taught some night school to help her, and we got some government food. I always felt guilty about that, but it got us through, because we couldn't afford to buy some food, so we used to go get government cheese and that kind of thing.
Wow. Well,
So,
how about that?
I always thought later in life, if I can give back in any way to this, to society, I will.
And does that motivate you still today?
Yes.
Looking back on how you were helped and the circumstances you came out of,
Right.
you said, I want to give back.
Right.
Oh, that's fantastic. I think it's really rather noble. I mentioned earlier that we're going to talk about the loss of your son. I don't know that there's really an easy way to talk about that, and of course it's tragic. Although what we're going to see when we get to sort of the end of the story, that some incredible and remarkable great good came out of this. This was your son, David. How old was he when the accident occurred?
8 years old.
8. So he was this little guy, full of life.
Yeah.
Was he as mischievous as you were?
I think so, yes.
Yeah.
He was the rambunctious one.
Was he?
He was, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what happened?
He was riding his bicycle in the neighborhood by our house, and a fellow that was intoxicated came speeding down the street and hit and run, and left him dying on the street. And with massive head injury and laceration, broken bones, and I was called there to take care of him. I arrived a few minutes later, and his heart had stopped. He was just laying there, just basically dead in a big pool of blood. Back of his head was just lacerated, just a huge laceration opened up there, and legs in funny positions from all the fractures. And I gave him mouth to mouth and chest percussions, and his heart started back up again. And of course, the ambulance arrived shortly thereafter, and we loaded him up, took him to the local hospital, started IVs on him, stabilized his fractures the best we could, and reloaded him in the ambulance, and got Michigan State Police escort to University of Michigan Hospital, and got him bedded down there. They got a trach for his breathing, of course, and he had to drill a little hole through his skull here to put a pressure monitor on there, and he remained unconscious. And so at the end of 3 months, he still had not woke up, no signs of life, just seizures. And the doctor said to my wife, you better just put him in a nursing home because he's going to die. Well, we weren't going to do that, He's our son. So he said, no, we're not going to put him in a nursing home. We're going to take him home. So while we were there, I met a occupational therapist that came and treated our son.
Before you tell that story, I want to ask you a couple of questions because I feel like you're going to race through this story a little bit too quickly. I hate to ask you this, but I'm going to ask you this. What's it like as a doctor who's also the father of the affected patient to happen upon the very broken body of your own 8-year-old son? One would imagine a parent coming apart. That wasn't an option for you because you had to now be a doctor and treat this young boy. But you're also a father. Walk me through how you're able to do that. I don't think everybody would be.
I think as a physician, we're trained to support life, and maintain life. And so I think it's like flipping a switch. You suddenly go from the father, to the physician, so to speak, in this case, and you immediately respond in the physician manner to maintain or to bring life back or to give life or help life in any way you can. So emotionally, the emotions of being my son, that was all sort of, I guess, in the background or gone. I was there as a physician treating the patient that needed help. so
And he just happened to be your son.
So you work in that mode to support life and give life.
So is there a time tomorrow morning or a few days later where you actually have to confront those emotions? Because it's a very emotional scene, but you suppress those deliberately in order to perform your function as a physician. You can't be an emotional wreck, and so you flip that switch. What happens when you allow, or what happened when you allowed those emotions to catch up with you? How'd you deal with that?
It was really a long haul because, of the severity of the tragedy and the severity of the condition. So every day you were struggling with that, even to the point where I said to myself one day, did I do my son a favor by resuscitating him?
Right.
I could have just let things be, and I could have just hugged him,
Yeah.
So somehow God gives you the strength to work through, and you just pray every day. There's been miracles in the Bible where Jesus has raised little people to life again. You just pray and hope that maybe that'll happen again, But each day you just go on, thank God for there is life, and do the best you can with a lovely, supportive wife taking care of you.
There's a lot to get to here. But I'm going to ask you about this. You mentioned your lovely, supportive wife. It's not uncommon that when a tragedy, and this is a tragedy, like this affects a family, that a family falls apart. But your family didn't fall apart. I can't imagine the emotions that your wife Carol experienced. Well, I guess I can imagine, but I can't imagine, I can't appreciate it. But she was going through hell as the mother of an 8-year-old who was hit by a drunk driver, and she had to deal with that. How did you, as a family, survive this? Because your family remained very much intact, and today you're a very healthy family. No one looks at you and says, oh, something happened to them a while back. You exude positivity and so forth, and no dysfunction. Lots of families fall apart. Why didn't the Gild family fall apart?
We always had morning worship, always had evening worship. God was, central in our life, central in our children's life. So we had hope, lots of hope.
What hope did you have when you had a comatose 8-year-old son? What does hope look like in that situation? You understand my question, right?
Yes. You hope for the best. You hope for the best, and you keep praying for the best. But when it's not happening, sometimes you get a little sad and a little depressed about it.
Yes.
And it's worrisome, and it's a struggle. And to add to all that emotion and problem, at the time we brought our son home from, almost within just a few days, our adopted daughter from Honduras arrived, and she was on death's doorstep, full of pneumonia and parasites and just a disaster. So now my wife had a son in coma and a daughter that was just very sick to take care of too. And
so this means that you'd arranged the adoption beforehand.
Right.
The adoption was in play, and the accident happened.
Yeah.
So you ended up with 2 extraordinarily needy children, and you understand the spirit in which I say this.
Yes.
In the house at the same time.
Right. And the adoption had been turned down by the government officials because they said they wouldn't allow it, and it was just circumstances that it at the very last minute things just changed, and there she was.
Wait, you're saying they weren't going to allow you to adopt your girl from Honduras?
Right. When I did a mission trip to Honduras, that's how I made the connection at the Young Birds orphanage down there, and we came back to the States, and we actually had birth certificates made locally for her. But the court down there, the judge thought it would be justifiable just to say that her parents could no longer take care of her. Well, the fact was her mother was going to throw her in the river and drown her because she couldn't feed her. So the neighbor lady said, you can't drown your daughter, give her to me. So her mother gave her to the neighbor lady, and the neighbor lady couldn't take care of her because she had 3 kids of her own, and they dropped her off at the orphanage, and that's how we found her. So we went through all this, and the judge says, okay, you can take the baby, you can have the baby. So we came back home, applied for the to the immigration department, and the lady in Detroit immigration says, you can't have that child. She has parents in Honduras.
Oh.
And we said, wait a minute, She doesn't have any parents in Honduras. We told her the story, told her what happened, had a letter from the doctor down there showing where everything is. And she said, no, she's got parents. You can't have her. So we hired a special immigration attorney to help us. No luck. And so we actually said, I guess God does not want us to have that child. So the moment we stopped, it was like the next day, the doctor's wife says, I'll be in Brownsville, Texas tomorrow afternoon at 2:00. Come and get your daughter. So I jumped on an airplane, flew down there, went across the border. She handed me the baby. I got to the border there, and the Border Patrol fellow says, who's that little girl with you? I said, that's my daughter. Well, here I am, light skin and freckles, okay? Yeah. And here's this little dark complected girl. He says, that's your daughter? I said, yeah. I said, yes, and here's her birth certificate. And I showed him the birth certificate that we had made in the United States, and my plane was leaving in 20 minutes. And he says to me, he looks at that and he says, go. And I told the taxi driver, I says, put the pedal to the floor, and we were gone. We jumped on the airplane and came home. That's where we were.
Wow.
So, and now we have this double whammy going.
Yeah. I don't even know how you figured that all out, but you did. So you said, and this is when I interrupted you a few minutes ago, you met a therapist. Did you say an occupational therapist or something? Tell me more.
So after we got to back to our home in Michigan and taking care of David, we realized that there wasn't much more that could be done for him. We'd gone through physical therapy and rehab therapy, everything that we could, but there was just no change. And we just had to realize that that's where we were. We said take care of him the best we can. He had tube feedings every day and so on. And so I said to my occupational therapist, there needs to be help for these young children that get these closed head injuries, and nobody's really taking care of them. They're put in the nursing home to die, or it's just.
And that was the standard of care back in those days, wasn't it?
Yes, this is in the 70s, yeah.
Yeah.
So I said, I think we should develop a program for long-term care of closed injury patients and see if we can help some of these kids out. And he said, I'd be happy to help you. So I asked the hospital administration if they would give us 2 beds in the nursing home for closed injury patients. Our son wasn't a candidate, unfortunately, but we got 2 patients that came from nursing homes, and we started treating them, and they started making progress. And basically their lives had been given up by and their families thought, they're going to die, but their families were happy. And so then I said, can you give us 4 more beds? And they said, yes. So they gave us 6 beds. And then we realized this was really a need. And the case managers for insurance companies would know where these people were in different nursing homes that had closed injuries that could probably benefit. And they'd tell us who they were, and we'd talk to families, and the families would send them to us. And so we developed the first long-term closed head injury program in the United States.
That's quite remarkable, isn't it? Now, you were doing this at the same time as you were carrying on your practice as a physician?
Yes, yeah.
And you were family practice at the time?
Yeah, general surgery and family practice. Every morning, surgeries, anesthesia, over 1,000 babies, the usual stuff, and the county coroner work, and then, and the home life. So it was busy. It
was sure busy. And on top of that, you now had a 6-bed facility where you were dealing with closed head injury patients. Right. What were you able to do for people in that situation? Because they'd been given up basically for dead. What could you possibly do for someone in that situation?
Intense physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, and then social work intervention. And because a lot of these people had potentials. There was no they weren't given any treatment.
Okay. You said they had potential. Before they came to you and I walked into the room and saw one of these people, what was I seeing?
You were seeing a person there all different positions, arms, crippled and couldn't move, couldn't walk, or barely walk.
They were twisted and contorted, couldn't get around. Yeah. Were they? So they're
not
ambulatory.
And mentation-wise, so of course, some severely disabled, but we could figure out which ones had some potential, which ones didn't.
Yeah.
And that's the ones that we worked on, of course. And we would have them for up to 2 years, but and then they would leave. There's one of those boys right now is still here in the state. I contact him every Christmas, and he's still alive and going. And some of them became functional enough to have some little menial jobs.
Well, how about that?
And it was remarkable. It was very rewarding. And the hospital was so impressed that we developed a closed injury unit just for these kids. It was in that time was $1 million expansion of the hospital.
This was in Detroit.
Near Detroit.
Okay.
Yeah. And we had patients come from all over the United States to our unit here.
And it was the first of its kind.
First of its kind.
And it was started by you.
Yes, and with the help of my occupational therapist friend. Yeah. And And a team, we had a beautiful team of people working together.
Hey, but there had to be this had to be tough. You had to have said, I wish David could respond like this.
Yes, we did. Of course we did.
Yeah, was that tough, or was it not tough? Maybe it was just you knew what David's situation was, and you were just thrilled to be able to help others like that.
We could see other people get helped. We were thankful, grateful.
When you began this, what did you see in the future? Did you see this kind of amazing turnaround of people's lives, or you didn't know?
Oh yes, I could see, and so could the other hospitals. Okay.
No, but what I'm saying is this: you get your first 2 patients.
Right.
Did you say, I see them doing jumping jacks and making their own bed one day, or did you say, I don't know, let's see how this is going to go?
Oh, I could see functionality. I could see them; they could function again.
So from the beginning, you believed you were going to see great progress.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
And so when it happened, it didn't shock you?
No, but we were very pleased to see it,
Yes.
of course, and it was hard work, and intense work,
It was.
And we could see the pain these patients went through, the therapies and so on. But it was amazing what they did.
It had to be thrilling to see, and I hope you don't mind me using the phrase, had to be thrilling to see the lights come on and certain difficulties no longer holding people back, and now their lives are expanding. That must have just been breathtaking.
God just opened doors.
I'm going to come back to that. You pioneered something that was historic from a medical point of view in the United States.
It wasn't me. It was.
Okay. God used you to do that. And it was born out of a tragedy. There's never going to be anything good about that tragedy. But something wonderful sprang from what was an absolute tragedy.
Many people were helped. Many people.
Do you reflect on that, or do you not think about that too much?
I'm just so thankful for it. I mean, I know God had a purpose. He has a purpose for every life.
Yes.
And it's hard for us to understand. My wife says, why him?
Yeah.
Why him?
So he got older, he went on vacations, you didn't. He was a member of the family. His health improved to a certain level, but there was not going to be anything beyond that. He'd get infections, he'd get sick, he'd go down, he'd come back up. He was hospitalized, he was released back to your family's care. Tell me how things ended.
Well, his body he had seizures, lots of seizures from the brain injury, of course. Every day he had little seizures of some sort. If we gave him too much medicine, he was just totally wiped out. If we let up a little bit, once in a while he would smile, get a little smile. We'd tell him something funny, and he'd get the little wrinkle, little smile. And then we lived for those little smiles. Those smiles meant a lot to us.
Yeah.
And my wife took such good care of him. She'd take care of him during the daytime. I'd take care of him at nighttime, type of thing. And we had some help from some nurses. Our children were always good support for us.
Yeah.
Really good support for us. But his system just wore out. There was no antibiotic that could help him with infection anymore. Antibiotic resistance, the seizures, and then just one morning shortly after Christmas, we were all at his bedside. He just took a couple little short. That was his last breaths, and he was gone in the arms of Jesus.
So it wasn't traumatic. I mean, for him to experience that, it seems like it was a peaceful
Very
exit.
peaceful, very peaceful. Yes. Very
Thank God.
peaceful.
How old was he?
Well, he was 15 years in coma. 15 years in coma. So.
Wow, so he was
24,
early 20s,
24
yeah,
years.
22, 24. What a thing. And yet out of that did come, as a direct consequence of that, if that accident had not happened, you would not have started the closed head trauma unit, the first of its kind in the United States, which was then rapidly imitated and replicated all around the United States, helping many, 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 many people. I don't like this, there's always a reason for everything. The reason it happened was sin. But what I do like is all things work together for good. And God is able to bring something wonderful out of something awful.
Awful. Yes, he is. Yes.
Yeah.
We have a great God.
We have a great God. Did your faith in God ever waver? Your faith? You mentioned you might have got a little angry with God, a little cross with God, struggled with it. Did your faith take a hit?
I'm sure it did. There was just so much going on. Life was so busy, and you're just so involved in. I don't know. We kept doing things, active in the church, active in society. Just kept moving along, active with other children, and their needs and so on.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, you're still at it. You're still working as a physician,
Yes.
and you're still traveling and participating in mission trips. You're about to go to the Dominican Republic again. Why do you keep doing it?
Yeah.
By the way, I'm happy you do. But I want to hear it in your own words.
I think because I just like to serve. I just and I love people, and I see the needs that they have. And when I see some of the mission experiences I've had, like the lady with the tumor, the lady
Yes.
with thought she had to lose both breasts. I mean, that was just like almost like a miracle,
Yeah.
And that lady, she was told she can never have children because they're going to at least never breastfeed because she's going to have a breast removed. She said, I want to get married and have children, Well, I know she's probably married now and has children.
Yeah.
But I mean, those things are just godsends, and every mission trip has something special. It seems, that you come across.
One of the things I love about the mission trips we do, and people come and get medical care frequently, without that mission trip, they would not get the medical care. They would just simply not get it. We had a young lady in Ethiopia in 2022, and she had a retinoblastoma. You could see the tumor on her eyeball, and it was cancerous, and so her eye was no longer functional, and a tumor here is close to the brain, and these things spread, and so she was going to die. She was, was she 12 years old, something like that, and she was going to die. Our eye clinic happened to be there. We had an ophthalmologist there. The parents brought her in, discovering we were there, and it was free. And we said, absolutely we will. And her eye was removed, which was not a loss because the eye was already non-functional. And so they took care of that. She has one healthy eye, no more cancer. She would have died. Now she's alive. And you say, wow, God took us there for a number of reasons, one of which was her. And this young lady still has her life today. It's just exciting. That's what you can achieve in this kind of work. It's not long-term missions. That's a horse of a different color. But it's still missions and it's still meaningful.
Yes.
Any places you haven't been that you want to go?
No, I've gone from the Arctic to the south, everywhere. I've pretty much covered all the areas.
Any places you have been that you still want to go back to?
Oh yes, I want to go back to Romania, Moldova.
Yeah, gotta go back there.
Dominican, yeah, sure. Probably some other places, but yeah, I need to slow down a little bit, but love to go. But experience after experience, I'll just tell you two more real quick ones.
Yeah, do.
It was in Moldova, and we went to the high school and did drug education for the students. And when we got through the drug education, the pastor says, "Now you teachers," he says, "we've got a doctor here, and we got a couple hours extra time." He says he'll be happy to do physical exams for you if you like. Would you like to have that done? He said he's even done my prostate check for me. He was really funny, And they said yes, we would. So the teachers lined up, and I was doing the exams. Two ladies. Big tumors in their breasts.
Really?
Yeah. And I know they're cancer, and they never had mammograms. They weren't taught self-breast exam. They just didn't go to the doctor. So I had follow-up on one of them. She went and had the tumor removed, and it was a lumpectomy, which was localized. Didn't have any radiation or chemotherapy. The other lady, I'm not sure. We lost contact with her. And then there was one of the gentlemen there. His blood sugar was 546.
What?
Normal blood sugar is around 100, all right?
Far out.
He didn't know he was diabetic.
Right.
He had no idea. So, I mean, he was just a godsend to be there at the right time in the right place, so to speak. So that's just God doing his work, not me. It's just God. He's always there with us, He's always there. He's before us. He opens doors and closes doors. Just like when we went to It Is Written in Mongolia. And we got there Sunday, opened our clinic in the church Monday morning. We just got through the clinic at noon. This 6'6" Russian-looking fellow walks in there and says, "You can't see any more patients. We have to shut you down. Government says you can't see people in our city here."
We already had permission to do so.
Yeah, we were devastated. What are we going to do? So we said, the only thing we can do is pray. So we got together and we prayed. And one of the fellows says, "I know a fellow that used to work for the government here. He raises German Shepherd dogs, and he's made a friend with one of the government officials. I'll call him to call the government official for you." So we said, "Great." So we get a call back. He says, "Come to church tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, and this gentleman will come there and meet with you." So we got there at 9 o'clock, and sure enough, he walked in there. He asked all kinds of questions. This fellow was really smart. He knew all my medicines. He even named antibiotics by name. I couldn't believe it. And he asked what we're doing here, why we're here. And so we're here just to serve your people. We don't want to disrupt anything, but we know there's people that are sick, need help, and that's what we're here to serve. Anything we can do to help, that's why we're here. And he says, "Well, you can't see anybody in our city. Government says you can't see anybody in our city." So we go, mouth just dropped. What are we going to do? And then he says, but there's a little place just outside the village here where they need medical help, and you can go there tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock and start. Oh, wow. Was that a good answer to prayer?
That sure was.
So we go there at 9 o'clock the next morning. This young boy, about 16, comes in with his older brother, and his older brother says, I said, what can I do to help you? His older brother says, well, he's got a problem in the genital area that he thinks he needs surgery. We thought maybe you could help him out. And so I said, fine, let me examine him. And he's sitting about where you're sitting at, but that far from me, and I'm listening to him, and as a physician, your ears are always tuned into different things, and I'm hearing this sss, sss, sss. What's wrong with this boy? So I move over close to him and I listen to him. I put my stethoscope there. I mean, there's a he had this huge heart murmur. His lips were blue, and this boy's in congestive heart failure. And I said to his brother, I says, I know he's got this other problem. I examined that. I said, but that can be surgically corrected for him. So don't worry. But right now we need to take care of his heart and lungs for him because he's going to die here shortly. So we immediately got him to a hospital. And I said to myself, God knew.
Yes, he did.
If we were in the city, we would
never have seen him.
Never seen him.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Isn't that something? Hey, before we go, I want to talk about the book, The Adventures of Freckles. Life Lessons from a Mischievous Son of Canada. That's you, Gordon Gild. Frozen tongue. What did your dad tell you not to do?
Do not put your warm, moist tongue on the metal of a sleigh because it'll immediately freeze there.
Don't put your tongue on the metal of the sleigh because your tongue will stick to it.
Right.
Right.
And you'll have to have your tongue cut off.
Have to have your tongue cut off. Correct. So what did young Gordon do?
Got the end of the sleigh ride with my brother, and my face was right down there by that metal, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, what if I just put a little itsy bitsy, just put my tongue, just a little, it wouldn't be, just a little itsy bitsy, it wouldn't be a problem. And there I was, frozen.
Your tongue was stuck to it.
Just frozen to the sleigh.
And you said to Leroy,
I call him, I couldn't talk very well. We were. I says, my tongue up. Cut my tongue up. And I reached in my pocket. I always carried my pocket knife with me. And I gave him my pocket knife, and he opened it up, and he's just shaking. He said, I can't cut your tongue off. Cut my tongue off. And I'm crying. And he gets down there and lays down in the snow, and he slices
and meaning not cut it off, but separated from the sleigh.
Just slice it off from the metal sleigh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I just bleeding like everything.
Man.
So nice fresh blood, and it looked pretty in the snow.
It looked great in the snow, I'm sure. Yeah. The book is The Adventures of Freckles. It's a hoot, and so are you.
Thank you, John.
Hey, thanks for being here, Dr. Gild. It's really been fun. I appreciate it. I love the book. I know many other people will as well. Your experiences have been a blessing. This has been good fun. Thank you. I appreciate it very much.
You're welcome.
And thanks for joining us. He is Dr. Gordon Gild. I'm John Bradshaw. This has been our conversation.